Welcome back. Today in our Sunday Spotlight, Nicole Zuraitis. The Connecticut resident is a singer, a songwriter, a pianist, and as of last month, a Grammy Award winner in the category of Best Jazz Vocal Album. Take a listen.
When I didn't know that I could burn so slow, deceptive ease and constant flow of vertigo, all worlds colliding in this tableau. How sincere the depth of what you say. I'll stay, if only for today. When I didn't know that youth could seem so wise.
And Nicole joins me in Studio A this morning. Nicole, thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me, Eric.
So you're here, you're a Connecticut girl.
I sure am.
And you walked up on the stage when they called your name at the Grammys. What was that like?
Oh my gosh, I still haven't been able to put words to it, but it was completely overwhelming. And generally when I'm on stage, I'm the most happy I could ever be anywhere. But man, walking up to that stage knowing you only have 45 seconds, and as an independent artist, you think it's just you that you have to be thankful for, but there's so many people that go into making this record possible. So I was like, blah, 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 like I was a used car, auctioneer trying to say all the words. I was just so, it was overwhelming and amazing.
Well, I watched your 45 seconds, and you did.
And a half.
You did, yeah, it was, and you did speed read. But one thing that you said in there got my attention, and you said, and it was towards the end, you said, "This is for those who sing their hearts out in the back of a noisy bar, hoping someone will hear us."
Wow. I actually haven't watched the speech at all. I can't bring myself to watch it.
But that's an interesting thought, because you did it. You got to the Holy Grail. You've got the trophy.
Yeah.
But there's so many people like you who are very talented who are singing in the back of a noisy bar. Were you thinking about them?
100%. The fact that I even wrote the speech is just completely out of character for me. But I was thinking that if I did have a platform, there's two things I want to thank. I want to thank Black American music, and the second thing is I want to let people know that if you are working and you are a working musician, you're doing great. So many of the times I've been, singing for my supper for 10, 15 years, and I would be in the back of a venue, and everyone's either watching YouTube in front of me or yelling over me and whatever, but I'd be scanning the crowd going, wow, I wonder if anyone here is, gonna make the next big break or whatever. But it's just been a really special thing to have people reach out to me and say, wow, you did it. This was a win for us, not just for you. And I really felt that.
So the album is How Love Begins. It's your 6th album. This was your 2nd nomination, your first win. You talk about having that speech, and you pulled out the crumpled piece of paper, which I love. As you were writing that out, were you thinking, I'm going to have to use this, or this was going to be like your seatbelt? You're going to put it on but never need it?
Well, the first time we were nominated, my husband, Dan Pugach, and I were nominated, and we did not see that coming at all. And we went to the Grammys, and we didn't bring a publicist because nobody told us that it was just myself and my husband and our families, and we didn't have a speech prepared. I remember right before they were reading the names, I'm like, oh gosh, what we're going to say. So this time I said, as a moment of meditation on the morning of, I will write a speech. And man, the fact that I got to read it is unbelievable. But I'm glad I got to make that shout out to the working musicians, because I'm a working musician.
Well, let's talk about you a little bit. You grew up going to school in Litchfield.
Yep.
You went to Holy Cross High School.
Great.
And you said you grew up right next door to the Litchfield Jazz Camp, and so you had access to these amazingly talented jazz musicians. Now you're on the faculty there.
Absolutely.
That's kind of cool full circle stuff, Nicole.
It's a beautiful thing, Litchfield Jazz Camp and the Litchfield Jazz Festival. When it began, I went to the first year, and I was a trombone player wearing soccer shorts, and then I went back 2 years later as a piano player, and ironically, both times I was there, I did not sing, and I also refused to improvise, because jazz, so much of it is based in improvisation. I was just too terrified. But because of having that in my backyard, I always saw an opportunity to, nothing is better than a jazz festival, an outdoor event, or, just people celebrating. And so I would go to the Goshen Fairgrounds, and I would trade my assistant services so that I could be a teaching assistant to some incredible jazz greats like Sheila Jordan and Kevin Mahogany. The list goes on, Karen Allison. And because of Litchfield Jazz Camp, I really kind of like wet my whistle for jazz.
And look at what you've made it into a career. You say, singing for your supper, but my gosh, you've made it. Does it feel that way?
Interesting. I think that making it in music is not something I would ever consider, I don't think I've made it yet. I still am always looking for the next opportunity. I'm always excited about what the next thing is to create. And when you're a creator, you can't always rely on it being consistent. So to make it, to me, would be peaceful enough to have a moment to just be a creator. So I'm trying to get to the point where, I'm just singing in front of wonderful audiences, and I can go home and then take a retreat, like, oh, woe is me, how stressful, I know that sounds ridiculous, but that would be making it to me.
People can go get the album, check it out, How Love Begins, but they can also hear you today?
Yeah.
Where?
Today at the Hartford Public Library for the Baby Grand series.
So you can come out and see you doing some performing.
Yeah, we're bringing my quartet from New York City, and we're super excited. It's just one great set this afternoon at 3 p.m.
I want to ask you about this, and I'm gonna mix metaphors a little bit. But when UConn won the national championship, their coach Dan Hurley said, "You spend your whole career striving for this thing, and then you get it, and then you got to go back out the next season and play again." So what's next for you? You reached the mountaintop. Now what?
You nailed it. Honestly, are you so happy? I was like, well, yes, I'm thrilled, but also I'm going, gosh, I better level up. So next for me, my husband Dan Pugach and I, he has a big band record out called Bianca. We're going to reissue that in August, and then I'm already recording my next album, all original music, and I'm also curating a songbook of original living jazz singer-songwriters. Lots of beautiful things, lots of jazz festivals, lots of touring. It's a beautiful place to be.
Well, listen, you talked about the Litchfield Jazz Camp propelling you and giving you that access. Hopefully people watching today, maybe young musicians are watching saying, I saw Nicole, I can do it too. I'm going to follow in her footsteps. And maybe someone will be up there hearing their name called and thanking you and talking about this little interview. Thank you for being here. We look forward to following your successes. We hope you'll come back and join us again, with a whole pile of Grammys.
I'll bring them all, baby. Thanks, Eric.
Nicole, thank you so much for being with us, and we're already rooting for you next year.
Thank you.
Before we go today, we want to tell you about a notable passing. Dan Nolan was on our newscast here at Channel 3 often during his 30-plus years with the Hartford Fire Department. He retired at the rank of Deputy Chief of Training. He also served 38 years in the Army National Guard. There, he reached the rank of Captain. He was also a champion for many charities across Connecticut, especially the Leah's Foundation for Leukemia Research. That organization credits him with raising more than $6 million himself. Dan would never sugarcoat his opinions, no matter how unpopular. He had his share of critics, and he certainly got into hot water at times, but no one could dispute that he lived a life of service to others. He died unexpectedly earlier this month. He was laid to rest yesterday, a proud Irishman buried over St. Patrick's Day weekend. Dan Nolan was just 61 years old. That is CT24 for this week. CBS Sunday Morning is coming up next. Have a great rest of your weekend. We'll meet you back here in Studio A next Sunday morning.